Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. Today's poetry discussion comes to us from Wallace Stevens, the Emperor of Ice Cream. And the discussion will deal a little bit with the poem. I promise we're going to talk about the poem. We're here for the poetry. But what is to me infinitely more interesting, at least right now, is the framing of the poem in this collection. So this is literature, literally just called Literature, a Portable Anthology, 2nd edition. There could be no simpler a name for a bunch of poems and short stories and plays put together. But they're put together chronologically. And we'll get there. The Emperor of Ice Cream. Call the roller of big cigars, the muscular one, and bid him whip in the kitchen cups some concupiscent curds. Let the wenches dawdle in such dress as they are used to wear, and let the boys bring flowers in last month's newspapers. Let B be finale of seam. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. Take from the dresser of deal, lacking the 3 glass knobs, that sheet on which she embroidered fantails once, and spread it so as to cover her face. If her horny feet protrude, they come to show how cold she is, and dumb. Let the lamp affix its beam. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. So, this is a famously difficult type of poem. A famously sort of, what are you doing here type of poem. When I first read it, I remember the class I was in, and I read it. First off, I had no idea what was going on. Second, I didn't know what was going on. What was the subject of the poem? Couldn't really tell. I didn't know what the hell was happening. What was the meaning of the poem? I had no idea, especially of that. So what we're getting here is we're getting sort of directions from someone over a funeral. So you read a little bit more closely, and you're getting directions over a funeral for a woman. So you think a little bit outside of that. Probably we're dealing with either a child who has lost, an adult child who has lost a parent, or a husband who's lost his wife. Probably this is what we're dealing with. So what does it mean? The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. Well, every discussion that I've ever heard, everything I've ever read, sort of basically, the only emperor is the emperor of ice cream is a phrase thrown in here because what the poem is about the regularity of death, as well as the fact that life moves on after death. Not for the dead, hopefully. This isn't that kind of literature yet. We're not there yet. Frankenstein actually was before this, but the only emperor is the emperor of ice cream is meant to weaken the word emperor. All emperors will turn to dust. The only emperor is the emperor of something so fanciful as ice cream. What does it matter if you're the emperor of ice cream? It doesn't. You're the emperor of nothingness. You're the emperor of something that melts as soon as it gets hot. You're the emperor of something that might bring a little bit of joy but has absolutely no caloric merit. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream is a term meant to regularize the term, to weaken the term emperor, such that it falls in line with the fact of the poem. Everyone dies, and afterwards, hey, the rest of the world moves on. But the real reason that this poem sort of stuck out to me today, like I said, this collection is chronological. This poem was published in 1923. This poem was published 7 years after The Road Not Taken. So between Wallace Stevens and Robert Frost is merely Gertrude Stein in this collection. Chronological by date of birth of the author. Right before this is Gertrude Stein. A couple poems into Robert Frost. The Road Not Taken. You know The Road Not Taken. If you've ever held a Hallmark card, you can read The Road Not Taken. I say that not to degrade The Road Not Taken. I say that because of where poetry is and where poetry was. This poem, two roads diverged in a yellowed wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all of the difference. That poem, ba-ba, 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 A, ba-ba, 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 B, ba-ba, 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 A, ba-ba, 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 A, ba-ba, 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 B. That poem, written in 1916. The poem I just read you, called The Roller of Big Cigars, the muscular one, and bid him whip in the kitchen cups concupiscent curds. Let the wenches dawdle and dress as they are used to wear, and let the boys bring flowers in last month's newspapers. Let B be finale of seam. The only emperor's the emperor of ice cream. Was published in 1923. Published the same year as this. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater, beside the white chickens. William Carlos Williams. That was the same year as this. Both of these, just 7 years after, Robert Frost published the most famous Hallmark card in history. When the wheels came off of this poetry thing, they came off. This era of writing, 1920s, was really revolutionary. This era of art in general, the 1920s, extremely revolutionary. It's worth looking into, no matter what art you enjoy. So one of the big things that happened at this time was that photography really came into its own. This caused a huge uproar in the painting world, because now in painting, verisimilitude meant nothing. Well, why do I care to paint a painting of someone to look like them when all you got to do is take the picture? So it divorced painting from verisimilitude. And then painting could be more about expression. Writing moved in much the same way. There was a Dada movement in writing. There is minimalism in writing. Minimalism, a sharp divorce from perhaps maximalism, wherein you would feel necessary to describe everything so that your reader gets the full picture, versus Hemingway. The man sat at the bar. It was a good bar, fine and true, right? So this poem, The Emperor of Ice Cream, this is 90 pages after Shakespeare. Shakespeare, 90 pages after. And obviously this is not an exact unit of measurement, 90 pages and a random collection away, but sort of it is, right? These are meant to be poems which encapsulate the era during which they were published. Artists that wrote when they wrote. We have little snippets therefrom. This is 90 pages after William Shakespeare. It's 30 pages before Charles Bukowski. When the wheels came off of this thing, they came off fast. And I say that with great love of Bukowski, right? I don't say that to denigrate anyone's name. So, thinking about this, the timeline here, how fast things moved, and when they started, when they accelerated. I brought up Robert Frost because he's the poet, like, he's the most famous poet right around this, right? Everybody knows Robert Frost. You've read Robert Frost. If you're here on this channel, you've certainly read Robert Frost. Robert Frost was born in 1874. He died in 1963. That's a good long time. Not 100 years. It's a good long time. Robert Frost was alive at the same time as Emily Dickinson. Robert Frost was alive at the same time as Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman died when Robert Frost was like 20. Walt Whitman died in the 1890s. Robert Frost was alive at the same time as Lord Alfred Tennyson. I believe Lord Alfred Tennyson died in the 1890s as well. Robert Frost was alive at the same time as Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman. Robert Frost died a year before Bret Easton Ellis was born. Bret Easton Ellis was almost alive at the same time as Robert Frost. American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis. To think that one author who was alive a long time, but not like crazy old, bridged Emily Dickinson to American Psycho. One guy. That's only possible with the artists of the 20s. That's only possible when The Emperor of Ice Cream comes out 7 years after your most famous poem. That's only possible when The Red Wheelbarrow comes out 7 years after your most famous poem. Madness. This is madness. Yeah, I think that's what I got today. So, where's the revolution today? Where are we headed? I talk enough shit on this channel. I'm not very impressed with a whole lot of stuff that comes out these days. Not that they have to write to impress me, right? That's not what I'm saying. But I can read Bukowski and see the art underneath it, just the same as I can read Shakespeare and see the art underneath it. I can recognize it. There's a lot of stuff I've been told I have to read contemporarily, and I'm sure there's stuff out there. But where's the revolution? Where are we going from the road not taken to the Emperor of Ice Cream and making sense? I'd love to know. I really would. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. I hope to have you back next time for another poetry discussion.